No courtroom drama today, but we are going to be discussing the Book of Judges. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, author of the book Consider My Servant Job, and this is Come Follow Me, Get to the Point, where I always show up, I always come prepared, we never take roll, and it's bring your own refreshments. This is a chocolate bar, which I throw over my shoulder, and I think that landed in the trash. I wasn't even aiming. So the Book of Judges. So first of all, I hope you're using the study helps, reading the Bible dictionary, the guide to the scriptures, and that you're just getting a lot of background information as we move into the more historical books. It'll help you get round out the what you're reading, give you some background and context. You're not just jumping into it. Like the Book of Mormon, we're really familiar with, and also with the New Testament. If you're an American, when you read the Doctrine and Covenants, you know exactly what the Mississippi River is, and New York, and where Ohio are. Book of Judges, maybe not so, especially with the unusual names and unusual places. So, Judges. That is an unusual term. It could be better translated as chieftains or the heads of clans. Is that you have these people who rise to power. Is that when Moses came in, you had the Levites, which were handled the temple. Then you had the priests and Levites who did the temple work. And you had the prophets who would lead and instruct people. You had the 70 elders of Israel. And then you had all these judges that Moses set up. And this seems to be an outgrowth of the system that Moses set up with the judges. It comes from that conversation he had with his father-in-law Jethro. Other terms you want to pay attention to are Baal and Baalim and Ashtaroth and Nazarite. And these can be found in the Bible dictionary. This is get to the point. You have the information at hand, and I'll move on. So Judges 2. Judges 2 is a good piece of analytic history where it sums up what's going on here. And you can compare it to Section 1 of the Doctrine and Covenants, where there's a pattern. Again, this is what's happening in the Book of Judges, and it's the same story that you read in the Book of Mormon. Is God says do this, people ignore him, bad things happen, and you just get in a downward spiral. In the process, God sends not only prophets, but he also sends judges to help solve the problems. These are people who rise to power, who are able to fight off enemies. And this is important as they're coming into the Promised Land. And this does raise issues. Okay, is this a war of aggression? They're coming in there. Is this genocide? And I'm not going to give you an answer. You need to study that and come to your own conclusion about that. I mean, I can sort of give you clues here and there. For example, in the United States, was the American Civil War justified in order to stop ending slavery? Were we imposing our values upon the South? And you can apply that to other areas, such as like with the Cold War and liberating people under oppressive regimes. Like I said, you have to answer these questions on your own. We can sort of talk about them, but it's a complex question. It can't be solved in a get-to-the-point format. So the problem is they're entering the land is the danger of assimilation, where we start adopting the practices. There's the physical problem. In our day, it's more of the cultural or temporal. As times change, we want to change things to fit in with other people. And on one hand, there's groups like the Mennonites and the Amish who keep the traditional ways, and you want to be respectful of that, but that may not be the best approach for other people, even though it may work for them. On the other hand, it's just going along with the crowd is also problematic. So that's why you need prophets to help sort out the timing. Okay, how do you do things? How much do you assimilate and fit in with the current culture? Let's see, what is there? So the big problem was intermarriage. And if you remember, intermarriage was a problem before the flood, that we're marrying outside the covenant, raising children outside of the covenant, and this is one way that assimilation happens. And so think about it, why is marrying outside the covenant such a problem? And you can't look to your friends who may have married outside the church or just with other marriages, how you actually integrate stuff. The Juke is the Catholic and Jewish wedding, and okay, it's Christmas. Do you have a Hanukkah bush or a Christmas tree? It's that type of stuff. And we get some of the minor judges, and that's sort of a unfair term, like the minor prophets. You have Othniel, Ehud, and Shamgar, and you compare them to the leaders in the Book of Mormon. By the way, that's the term judges was used in the Book of Mormon. I think it comes from this, is that the original setup was Moses said, okay, we have judges. Then as we're going to read, they went to a king. The Book of Mormon did it backwards. They started with the king, the reign of the Nephites, and ended up with King Mosiah. And then they said, hey, let's go back to doing the judges. and that's actually the better system is with the judges. And like I said, this is a book. You can read the Book of Mormon about the arguments about why that is. It had to do with their experience with King Noah, and also reading the history of the Jaredite plates. That okay, this is what the Jaredite kings do, and you're going to see a parallels between the Jaredite kings and what we read in the Book of Samuel and in the Book of Kings. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So probably the three you want to pay attention to are Deborah, Gideon, and Samson. And Deborah is interesting, female leader. She's also described as a prophetess. And this is what you read about in the Book of Mormon, is that when the Nephites were righteous, they'd always get their leaders have the spirit of prophecy. Captain Moroni is a good example. You also read about in 3rd Nephi, Laconius was another righteous leader, and that's how you determine to vote. Okay, is this person a righteous leader? In the United States or in other democracies, you look at the spirit, what their level of spirituality is. This doesn't mean, okay, you only vote for members of the church, but that's something that you pay attention to. So she's a prophetess. She worked with another named Barak, and that is Hebrew with lightning. Barak and Deborah. You have a story of Jael, this lady who drives a spike through her the person's head, and it's funny. There's a funny story in the apocryphal book of Judith where Judith does the same thing. He actually beheads a person. So if you got time, you want to read it. Read the apocryphal book of Judith, and it's online. So Gideon, we're familiar with the story that he gets called. He needs these signs to convince him to do stuff. He leads the army, and the God says, okay, we want you to drink the water. The people got on their stomachs, said, okay, we want you out, but the people got on their knee and scooped up with their knee, okay, we'll stay here. And they're able to, instead of really engaging with the people, and this is like Captain Moroni, where they sneak into the city, arms all the women and children. Next morning, the Lamanites wake up, everyone in the city is armed, and they're able to avoid problems like that. And this is something to think about with that that's talked about in the Federalist Papers, that you need to have a strong military, not necessarily, and also with Sun-Tzu, you have a strong military, and that's a disincentive to engage in a war with someone. Because if you have a strong military, you're not going to fight someone with a strong military. Another way to put that, you have two houses. One has a peace sign out, the other one says lifetime member of the NRA. Which one is a crook going to break into? So what happens is Gideon, slippery, and then you have the story with the trumpets, where they break the vases, and it was a good example of psychological warfare. Let's go on to Samson, and this is, I hope you're liking the Book of Judges. We're starting to get more of the stories and less of the ordinances performed to say, okay, this is how you build a temple. We're talking about true life case studies and true life experiences. Just with my writing, I know that stories sell 10 times 100 times are more effective than explaining doctrine, although you need to explain doctrine. So he is prophesied, he was born a Nazarite, and that's another term you need to look up, where he didn't drink alcohol and he had his hair grow long, just like Porter Rockwell, and how his angels attended his mothers. You have the incident where Samson talks riddles, and he explains riddles to the group of people about, he kills the lion, just like with the Hercules and the Nemean lion, and that's the killing of the lion is a test of strength. The riddle's the test of intelligence, and that's like when you read in the Lord of the Rings when Bilbo first meets Gollum. They start telling riddles to each other, which is really kind of unusual. But what it is they're sparring. They're saying, okay, who's the smarter, who's the more clever person? If you're smart, you can figure out what the riddle means. So he has Samson has the war, and you have the incident with Delilah, and he was an intelligent person, but he wasn't a wise person, and that's where the disobedience comes in, that he marries outside the covenant, and he just got suckered in with Delilah, where Delilah told the secret of his hair, so he gets his hair cut, and then gets chained to the temple, and then as his hair grows back, he brought the house down. And don't get caught up so much with the hair or length of hair or anything like that. It's really what the hair is just a sign, the same way that wearing a white shirt or white clothing in the temple is a sign, and really it's all coming back to God's power. And that's the thing about it, is Samson is a man with potential, but he just never really quite used it. He had knowledge and strength, but just didn't have wisdom or an obedient heart. And that kind of lost out because Samson could have completely gone the other way. Now we don't know what happened in it was going to happen in the resurrection with the final judgment with Samson, but that's just a partial observation we make here. So let's just stop it right here. I'm at nearly 10 minutes. So let's hit to the Christ quotient. And I have a list of things we could talk about. Samson as an imperfect symbol of Christ, how Christ is one mighty and strong, and he's intelligent and physically strong. You can talk about Christ's attitudes towards woman, and with Deborah having the Spirit. But sit there and just pay attention. Is how do you find Christ? Just think about this question: is as you're reading the stories about people and Samuel and King Saul and King David, who's King David's another person like Samson, a good symbol, but just not quite good enough when it came to when he fell from his exaltation. How did reading the lives of imperfect people lead you to Christ? Sometimes when we study the lives of that's one of the problems we've had with church history is people have been shying away with some of the more problematic aspects, and now we're embracing those. And I think you get a better rounded picture of stuff. It's more realistic. Plus, you're just telling the truth. If Joseph Smith lost 116 pages, yeah, let's tell the truth about that. It's in the Revelation. But as you're studying the lives of imperfect people, how does an imperfect person, how can an imperfect person lead you to Christ? And being led to Christ is the point.